Happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, October 12th, 2021, and welcome to another edition of Tuesdays with Thom, brought to you by the Best Girl Consulting Firm. So Keyshawn Johnson, you may remember him as a former NFL wide receiver, a good wide receiver, and he's now one of the commentators on the ESPN show, Keyshawn, J. Will, and Max. Keyshawn says that former Oakland, Los Angeles, Las Vegas Raider coach John Gruden is a bad person. Gruden resigned yesterday over numerous emails of his that were released in the investigation of the culture of the Washington NFL football team. Gruden's emails were characterized as racist, misogynistic, and anti-gay. The emails in question are over a 7-year period ending in 2018. I am not a racist, says Gruden. I can't tell you how sick I am. I apologize again to D. Maurice Smith, who Gruden characterized as having lips as big as Michelin tires, which is considered a racial slur. But I feel good about who I am, Gruden says, and what I've done my entire life. I apologize for the insensitive remarks. I had no racial intent with those remarks at all. I'm not like that at all. I don't want to keep addressing it. I can't remember a lot of things that have transpired 10 or 12 years ago, but I stand here in front of everybody apologizing. Gruden continued, I don't have an ounce of racism in me. I'm a guy that takes pride in leading people together, and I'll continue doing that for the rest of my life. Again, I apologize to D. Smith and anybody that I have offended. So is this incident just about Gruden being a racist, being sexist, being homophobic? I don't think so. I think it's deeper. I think it's much deeper. It's cultural. It's cultural within that institution. Some people will say it's years ago and it's just one man, but it's cultural within that institution and other institutions, professional football teams, colleges and universities, corporate entities have to address it, not just by hiring Black, gay, Latinos, and others, but by looking into their cultures and making systemic changes. If you're not willing to do that, then this will continue. We will continue to have these incidents. People are gearing up for Halloween. Don't remember seeing so many goblins and ghosts and scary stuff in people's yards this far out from Halloween. People are excited, and it's not just children. Let's plan on having a great Halloween, and it's also great to see thousands of people in the stands at football games. But let's not forget the C word, COVID. It's still very much a danger, particularly to those who are unvaccinated. Some doctors are becoming more and more frustrated with the unvaccinated patients who are in vaccine denial and trafficking in what the doctors are calling misinformation. So check this out. One patient got so irate over the fact that his wife was forbidden to be by his bedside because of COVID precautions that he threatened to get dressed and walk out of the hospital. That's what he told the doctor. I'm going to get dressed and just walk right out of here to my car. And the doctor coolly responded with, you are welcome to leave, but you'll be dead before you can get to your car. There is a lot of vaccine misinformation out there. Check out these misinformation stories. A doctor in Illinois has patients tell him that microchips are embedded in vaccine as part of a ploy to take over people's DNA. Watch out for your DNA if you get that vaccine. A Louisiana doctor has resorted to showing patients a list of ingredients in Twinkies because they say they don't know what's in the vaccine. So he reminds those who are skeptical about the makeup of vaccine that everyday products have a lot of safe additives that no one understands. He pulls out a package of Twinkies and he goes through all the ingredients in the Twinkies and asks them if they know what those ingredients are. And of course, they don't. Some patients say they, whoever they is, are putting tracking in the vaccine and it makes the person magnetic. One of their doctors said the biggest factor in misinformation surrounding the vaccine is social media, namely Facebook. One doctor's prescription to cure hesitancy and misinformation is stop looking at Facebook. Oh, and that guy who threatened to walk out of the hospital, he died. Today's G-List guest is Marshall Walker out of Knoxville, Tennessee. And let me just say up front, we're having some internet issues with Marshall. We may be able to get him on clearly. We may have to hook up some kind of three-way deal to get him on, but we're working on it right now. And hopefully we will be able to talk with Walker. Marshall is an educator, a social worker, a coach, a former athlete. And just 2 months ago, he represented his brother, Jackie Walker, who was permanently memorialized with a statue outside the university's Neyland Stadium. We'll talk about that and more on the G-List. The G-List is sponsored by Mainstream Financial Group. Mainstream Financial brings financial vision and clarity to your retirement plans. Talk to the folks at Mainstream Financial if you are retired or considering retirement. Don't let your money run out before you do. This edition of Tuesdays with Thom, of course, is sponsored by our partners, the Best Girl Consulting Firm. Who and what is Best Girl? Well, let us tell you.
Best Girl is a consulting firm that provides customized leadership, access and inclusion, public relations, communications, and organizational consulting services. Clients include Fortune 500 companies, utilities, higher education institutions, small businesses, and associations. Best Girl's team of consultants, led by Joyce Gilly-Gossam, Emily Hedrick, and Sean Jones, partners with business and education clients to promote organizational effectiveness, communication, motivation, and leadership, with always an impact on the bottom line. Best Girl's customized consulting services include strategic planning, corporate communication, executive coaching, fundraising, and economic development.
The solution that fits your needs. So let's get to our roundtable regulars and introduce Barbara Wallace Edwards and Michael Walker. Barbara Wallace Edwards. Barbara is in Birmingham, I assume, today. She's originally from Mobile. And Barbara, are you out there today? How are you?
Good morning, Thom. I'm doing well, thank you. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. So how was your past week?
My week was good, Thom. I want to start this morning by sending out birthday shouts out to two very special people. Maggie Davis, who's my cousin that actually lives in Knoxville, Tennessee. I have a lot of family there in Knoxville, so I visit quite often. And Maggie is the same age as my mother. Her husband is the same age as my father. And so since my parents have passed away, they've been parents figures to me and my siblings. So sending birthday greetings to her, as well as another young lady, Miss Paulette Henderson, here in Birmingham, Alabama, is celebrating her birthday today. When I first moved to Birmingham and attended church, Miss Henderson and her family took me under their wings, and they sort of became my Birmingham family. So I'm very close to their family today. So birthday greetings to both those ladies.
Well, you mentioned Knoxville, Tennessee, and that's where our G-List guest comes from today.
Yes.
Before speaking with him, let's get Michael Walker on the phone. Michael, let's get on. How you doing, man?
Good morning, Thom. I'm not on the cell. I'm live in living color with you.
I see. Well, I got a couple things on my mind. We're trying to work out this situation with Walker and get that going. So what's happening with you, man? How you doing?
I am doing well. I hope both you and Barbara are doing well. Thom, I want to talk to you a little bit. It's almost like you must have been looking over my shoulder with the research when you talk about all the misinformation. I have something. It's not misinformation, but I think it's a sign of things to come. A Colorado hospital refuses kidney transplant to a woman over her refusal to have the COVID vaccine. She received a letter around September the 28th, informing her that she will be inactivated on the list for non-compliance by not receiving the COVID vaccine. The letter went on to say that if you continue to refuse the vaccine, you will be removed from the kidney transplant list. Now, both this lady and her donor have refused to get the vaccine. Her donor refused for religious reasons. And the young lady said that she was previously told that the vaccine was not required for the transplant. And her donor says, here I am willing to direct donor her, and it does not affect any patient on the transplant list. And he says, how can I sit here and allow them to murder my friend when I got a perfectly good kidney and save her life? These are some things that are going to start to come to fruition, and you'll see more and more about that. She says that she was tested before and her body showed some antibodies in it, and they said it wasn't required. However, the other side of it is said that in most all situations, transplant recipients and living donors at this particular hospital in Colorado are required now to be vaccinated.
Well, I don't know what to say, man. It's kind of ridiculous. They're going to put some kind of device in you that'll take your DNA. And you know, here's the thing, and I can see it from a medical standpoint. If you give these, you know, I'm probably so many people standing in line for a kidney transplant.
Right.
And if this woman gets it and then she dies shortly thereafter from COVID, they're basically
wasted a kidney.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. I don't know.
I'm not sure what it's going to take, Tom. You know, you hear these type of stories all the time. People saying, "Yeah, I don't want to take it because I don't know what's in it," or you know, yeah, the tracking thing. They've got magnets in it that they're injecting in our bodies, and they can. How can you justify that? They have no reasoning behind that. It's just something they've read somewhere or they heard someone say that, and they believe it. But like you said, they eat things that they know are bad for them, and then they eat things they don't even know what they're eating a lot of times, and they don't question that. And yet you want to question something that's supposed to help you live and survive. It makes no sense.
Well, I look at it from another perspective. You know, medical professionals take an oath to provide care and do what they can to save one's life.
Mm-hmm.
Are they now going against that oath because they're saying this person refused to get a vaccine and we are not going to give you a kidney that will save your life? There's
But Michael, there's other people out there whose lives need to be saved as well, who may have a better chance of surviving if they get that kidney. So they have to look at it both ways.
I agree. I'm just posing the question there.
Right.
You know, there's an oath that they take, and you know that.
Yes.
So I don't know. I'm just putting it out there, something for our audience to think about.
Well, I guess I'll go and get a package of Twinkies and see what's actually in it. I've never eaten Twinkies, so maybe I don't have to worry about it.
Me either, Tom.
They may have put something in it that if you hold the package, it may sip through the package into your hand. And
if you can read half of the ingredients on there, if you can actually pronounce those things, you're doing well. Because again, most of those listed with ingredients, even if you read it, you don't know what it is.
It's not a nothing funny, but it's serious. And like one of the doctors says, he says many of these patients are going to Dr. Facebook to get their information. And I know a lot of the people on Facebook, and I wouldn't get medical information from them. I'll just put it that way.
No.
One other thing, Tom, I like to discuss with you and Barbara is that you all know that we're in a situation where Congress needs to raise the debt ceiling limit. Right at the point right now, according to Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, she warned that if we do not do something about it by October 18th, it could force the U.S. into a recession. The thing about this is if they are not given the okay to raise it to a certain limit, there are several programs that could be affected. Social Security payments among them. Retirees receive an average of $1,555 a month in Social Security benefits, while disabled people receive $1,280 on average. That program could be affected. Also, there are 60 million Americans that receive health insurance coverage through Medicare or Medicaid. 75 million are on Medicaid currently. That could be impacted. Tax refunds. child tax credit. The IRS said in September, child tax credit payments total approximately $15 billion, going to around 35 million families. So Congress needs to move and move quickly.
Yes.
Okay. And I'll just tell you my thought on that. They'll fix it, and just like they always do.
Right.
And it's just a bunch of silly ass drama that they need to go up there and do their effing jobs because they're not serving the people of the United States.
Not at all. They're just
I don't
playing
care if you're
political.
Republican or Democrat or whatever it is.
They're playing political games, and you know, people's livelihoods.
Let's talk about something that matters. Let's talk about John Gruden. What do you think about John Gruden, Barbara?
John says he's not a racist, Tom, and I'm going to leave it at that. But all those emails say something totally different. He says he's proven himself for 58 years, and you know the way he treat people. But what you say and what you do may be different. That just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. You know, you can't say one thing and say you're treating people differently. I don't buy it.
Michael?
Well, first of all, I'm not surprised, to be honest with you. You know, I've been around institutions in corporate America, and I know there's an underlying culture there, especially with people that have been put in positions of power just by their membership in the club. And you both know what I mean by that. Mm-hmm. And to be honest with it, they don't want anybody else in the club. So this is the type of language that goes along and is talked about, including our former president, you know, when he talked about locker room talk, and he made the comment, you just grab them by the, you know what, and it's okay. I have a daughter. If I were running for office, I would never say that. I've never said that when I wasn't running for office. Right. But that's the culture with certain people that are in power, that are in the club automatically, and they just laugh it off. Oh, that's just John. He doesn't mean anything, you know, and they sweep it under the rug and keep moving. This just came to light. So I'm not shocked. I'm not surprised at all. I know that's just the way it is.
Yeah, and probably if you go back in history and look at a lot of people's email trails, you're going to find some things very similar to that. Like I said, Michael, people who are in power feel that they can say and do anything that they want to, and it's okay. They're talking to their friends that, you know, they don't expect this to ever get out into the public. So they feel free to say whatever they want to say.
Right. You just answered what I was going to say next, and that is, why in the world would you put it in an email? I mean, there has to be something that makes you feel that you're above things and it won't come back to bite you. But in this day and time, emails and cameras and stuff are everywhere. You know,
but when you speak when you're having that communication with someone that you feel had the same mindset and the same thoughts that you have, you feel very comfortable. You know, he thought he was, you know, speaking to someone that felt the same way that he did.
Bruce Allen, who was the president of the team or what have you.
Absolutely. They might want to look into his email trail as well. They may find some things very similar.
You know, what's interesting is he also said something about Roger Goodell, the commissioner, but they never said what he said.
What he said, right. And
they just kept saying he made a comment about Roger Goodell, about President Obama, about current president. And I don't know. I think it's within these institutions. And if you're not going to do things to address the culture of the institution, it's going to change. You can go hire a black man and make him president. If you don't change the culture of the institution, it's not going to change. You can bring as many black kids as you want into your universities. If you're not going to change the culture, it's not going to change. And I forget where I saw this the other day, but I don't know where, but one of the fraternity houses and the young pledges were told, you know, don't bring any of those N-words around to the frat house. You know, that's the culture.
Right.
That's culture that's perpetuated. So I thought it was interesting. Keyshawn Johnson really lit him up. He said he's not a good person. not a good human being. And I don't know. I don't have anything about that, but I just think it's interesting. So let me ask you guys one more thing before we see if we can get Walker on here. So you both are follow Auburn closely as far as the football games and so on and so forth. And we've talked about Bo Nix and you know some of the things that he probably needs to work on. And as I've said before, I know that one game they booed him, and I don't think you should ever boo any college student out there doing the best that he can. So where do you think Auburn will end up? What's the record now? 4-2? What is it?
4-2, I think.
Yeah,
Where do you think they'll end up? What's going to be the record at the end of the season?
Right now, Tom, my guess is we 7-5, 6-6 or 6-6. I don't see us winning the real big games. We may get lucky and win a few more, but unless some things change, I attended the game on Saturday, and some of the plays look like they went back to the old playbook, and it really
Malzahn's playbook, you mean?
Yes, Malzahn's playbook. I think they pulled it out.
Uh-oh.
There were so many
you
lateral.
Fixing to get Michael. You just lit Michael's fire.
There were so many lateral passes thrown on Saturday, and I'm thinking that we need to be going downfield, not not cross the field. So and Bo bless his heart, but when they snap the ball, his feet start moving. He's dancing around, jumping out of that pocket. And I'm not a player. I've never played, but I can see that.
I think if I were, one of the things I would do with Bo is show him the tape of Jackson last night.
Lamar Jackson.
Yes. Lamar, because he's a runner.
Right.
But he's learned to stay in that pocket until he absolutely has to run.
Right.
Go ahead, Michael.
Well, I still think that with the talent we have, limited as it is, we should probably minimum win 7 games. I think we can realistically go 8-4, to be honest with you. Now, we got to eliminate mistakes that shoot ourselves in the foot. We can't get penalized and do all those things. But I think if they execute, and Barbara, I understand what you're saying about it seems like they pulled out the Gus Malzahn playbook. I respectfully disagree with you. And the reason why I say that is that playing against Georgia in that defense, when you have a very aggressive defense, you have to do things to counteract that. And one way to take advantage and exploit that is by doing screen passes to the running backs. Also, it gives you an opportunity to get the ball out of your hands quickly. Now, that being said, that interception that Georgia got deep in our territory when Bo threw a screen pass to the running back,
right?
That screen pass was not accurate. Okay.
Okay.
And I know that they say if the ball touch your hand, you're supposed to catch the ball. But there are some balls that touch your hands that are not catchable balls.
If it's coming like a rocket, and you're only 5 yards away from it,
right?
Hard to catch that.
And you hit him in the shoulder pass when he's running away from you. Okay, you got to put that ball out in front of him so he can catch it on the run and turn up field. So I don't blame that on Shivers. That's a Bo issue. So it may look like it's a Malzahn issue, but that's a basic concept when you have a fast, aggressive defense is you have to throw screen passes. That's how you exploit them. Yeah.
Well, there were several passes thrown at the person in front of me said, Bo threw the ball right. It hit the man in his numbers. I said, yeah, but it was the number on the back of the jersey, not the front. You can't blame the receiver for that one.
I will say this, having played receiver, there is a thing that if the ball hits your hand, you're supposed to catch it. But there's also a thing that most running backs aren't good receivers. Right. That's why they're running backs.
Right.
And you have to throw that ball to a running back in his breadbasket so he can hug it. Right. But to ask him to stretch and catch it in his hands and he's running parallel or away from you, it's a tough catch for them, especially as hard as he was throwing it. And I remember when Bo was chosen as the starter under Malzahn, it was because of his, quote, accuracy. I don't even need to go any further with that point.
No. You don't.
Well, since you brought up Malzahn and what he said, he also said Bo was going to win a championship before he left Auburn too. So we can just add that to the list of.
Don't forget the Heisman Trophy now.
Yeah, right. I was going to say you're leaving something off the list.
Yeah. Well. Speaking of which, he let Malik Willis go and wouldn't play Malik. And Malik may be a first-round draft choice.
Yeah, I was
maybe the first choice in the draft.
Right.
Yeah.
He may be the Heisman winner too.
When they played UAB, UAB's coach said, well, I don't feel bad for my guys because we just played the best quarterback in the country.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
One last little quick thing. They unveiled the statues of the coaches at Auburn University, these former coaches, Coach Jordan, who I got to play under, Coach Dye, and Coach, what's his name?
Hare.
Coach Hare. So congratulations to them, and congratulations to the athletic department for doing that. Any comments from you guys?
Well, Tom, I want to congratulate the university and the families of those coaches as well. But at the same time, Auburn is erecting statues of those gentlemen, which again is great. But I think we should have added a couple more to that list. The people who really made a huge impact on Auburn's football, and that's the first Blacks who integrated the programs here at Auburn and made some changes, I think, in the whole history of the Auburn athletics department. We've seen the University of Tennessee, I think the University of Georgia move in that direction, and Auburn I don't know if it's even being discussed that Auburn is looking at erecting any type of statues or memorials in honor of Henry Harris and James Owens and even yourself, Thom. So, and there's some discussion now that Joe Witt, who I think was the first Black assistant coach at Auburn, that he needs to be recognized in a special way at Auburn University as well. And I'm totally in agreement with that. So I'm hoping that the university will wake up and now make some additional memorials and statues to honor those gentlemen who I've just mentioned.
Okay. Well, go ahead, Michael. You going to say something?
Yes, I'd like to comment on that. Barbara, I certainly agree with what you're saying, and you're saying it for all the right reasons. I don't know if that plays with Auburn, okay? But I think I have an idea how it may play with Auburn to do that. You mentioned that
listening sessions.
You mentioned that Tennessee and Alabama and Georgia have recognized pioneers that are African American in their programs. Okay. I think that, and I'm not saying that they didn't do it for the right reasons, but I think there's also another value to what they did. And that's something that Auburn is lacking. They talk about the new coaching staff needs to recruit. They need to get out there on the lines and recruit and get better players so that we can compete with the Georgias and Alabamas. I agree. But I think the university needs to do something to help them recruit. And that is the way to do it. Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama are no fools. They know that by doing that, that relates to those football players that will look at that school to come there. Auburn's doing nothing to help our current coaching situation or staff to recruit. That would be something we need to do to put us on par.
I agree.
I agree with you. And like I said, I played for Coach Jordan, who started coaching in 1951 and stopped in 1975. I doubt if many of the recruits today relate to that.
Right.
Even Coach Dye.
Right.
And so I agree with you 100%. And especially with Tennessee bringing in a new coach, I mean, it was almost like, hey, let me show you guys who we really are. Let me tell you about these three guys right here.
Right.
And so I commend them. I agree. The reason, there's probably some very self-serving reasons for it, but then many of the things we do.
Right. So true.
Okay. Well, let's see if we can get Marshall on here. And for those of you out there watching, we may have some issues here, but we're going to try and work through them. So the G list. Let's get to the G list. The G list is brought to you by Mainstream Financial Group. Mainstream Financial Group provides financial services for both individuals and businesses. Let's hear about Mainstream.
Mainstream Financial Group provides financial services for both individuals and businesses. Mainstream's mission is to understand the unique needs of every client and work closely with you, assembling a team to develop and manage your resources to help you accomplish your defined financial goals. Mainstream's financial professionals will provide you with a complimentary, no obligation financial review. Now, these professionals can then offer you custom advice to mend together the pieces of your financial life and come up with a plan that is truly comprehensive. Mainstream Financial assists retirees and those close to retirement in planning for a secure retirement so not to run out of money during your lifetime. You can take advantage of opportunities with tailored advice and the resources to act on it. Mainstream Financial Group, www.mainstreamfg.com, 205-324-0589.
Plan ahead with Mainstream and don't let your money run out before you do. So let's get to our G list guest for today. Hollywood has the A list, and here on Tuesdays with Thom, we have the G list where everybody's a star. And today's G list guest is Marshall Walker. Marshall is a counselor who has worked with a wide range of conditions, including drug and alcohol abuse, physical and mental abuse, family issues, and severe persistent mental illnesses. Marshall has worked as a recreation school social assistant football coach. One of the reasons Walker is here is to talk about his brother, Jackie Walker, who is one of the monuments outside Neyland Stadium at the University of Tennessee. I got to play against Jackie Walker. He's one of the best football players I've ever seen. And I was on offense, and we would be watching them on the film, and nobody could block this man. So let's see if we can get Walker on, and we'll talk a little bit about Jackie Walker and Marshall Walker. So
I'm honored. Yes, I do wish that my brother was living to accept his own award, but I'm my brother's keeper. And I've always cared about him, and now I'm really happy that UT, along with Knoxville, will honor a hometown boy. Jackie's from Knoxville, not necessarily from UT or necessarily from Fulton or Vine Jr. or Eastport Elementary. But I wish some people would have had the opportunity to meet him because he was a great person. And if he was a great person, he was a great football player. Probably one of the top 10 ball players to ever play in the SEC. And I'm honored. And eventually I probably let some of my mother come out and get emotional. But I'm not ashamed if that happens. And I appreciate people coming out and showing their gratitude for him signing and coming to UT. Because at one time, he was considered in FAMU. I was still at FAMU. And I told my brother, you done played against a lot of SEC players in high school. You can play. I didn't know what decision he made that night until the next day. But I'm glad he made it. And now the Walker family will be right here for the rest of my life.
All right. Can we get Walker on? Marshall. Marshall, can you hear me? That was great. I first of all, I appreciate you being on. And I just want to tell you that I agree with your comments about your brother. One of the most phenomenal players I've ever seen. You say he was top 10 in the SEC. So how you doing this morning?
Okay, he said, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, very well. We got some technical difficulties, but we're working through them. So Marshall, talk a little bit about your brother for us, when we'll come back to it. But you say you think he's one of the top 10 players ever in the Southeastern Conference.
Marshall, he said, can you talk about your brother?
Okay, Jackie was a very
Obviously, we're having some issues here.
And can you put your phone on speaker?
He's frozen. I'll talk a little bit about Jackie Walker. Jackie Walker, well, let's see. What do we got here? Marshall? Oh, man.
Emily.
Yes.
Marshall, just go ahead and talk because I can hear you. Just tell him we can hear him, man.
There you go.
Okay, Jackie and I grew up, I guess, kind of differently than brothers grow up today. If you were 2, 3 years older, you ran with a group, and your brother ran with a group. It's kind of funny that Jack and I never played sports together because of our age and everything. We didn't even run in the community together. But Jackie was a singer, like our family. We come from a really really religious family. Our grandparents were ministers and teachers, and we played sports. Jackie was temper was probably a little more softer than mine was. Um, we started running together when he was in middle school, and I had just went to high school over at Fulton. Jackie played sports. He really played baseball and football and basketball. He didn't really like baseball that much, but he was a starter in high school at Fulton, played on a state runner-up team in basketball. And of course, he played football. Jackie was really, really small growing up. They wanted to say that he was about 180 pounds at UT, but actually, Jackie was about 190 pounds. I remember Jackie telling me in the 10th grade that he wasn't going to play anymore sports because the senior team I played on was a big team and really good, but history says he changed his mind. So we never played together in high school. We were hoping that would happen. When we went to college, I got hurt at Florida A&M. And in my football career, Jackie got hurt at UT with a knee injury. He was able to come back, and he played out his career at UT. And we started getting closer as adults. We were really, really close when he passed.
Okay. Emily, he talks about his brother. His brother was honored with one of the monuments outside of the state.
Emily?
And we heard his comments. I'd like to just what that means to him for his brother to be honored as one of the 4 statues outside of Neyland Stadium. I'll just read some information about Jackie Walker. As I said, we played them early in my career. and he was the second, and he was, I think, the second or third player to play at Tennessee, black player. And they elected him captain his senior year, which was unheard of. He was an All-American. He still has the record. He's tied with other guys now for the most interceptions for a touchdown by a defensive player. I think it was 5 returned for a touchdown. It's still an NCAA record today, almost 50 years later. The team went 30, had 30 wins and 5 losses. Well, Walker's 3-year stint. Is Marshall available now? Whenever he's available, you could just have him interrupt me, and we can start talking. And we may just bring Barbara and Michael on, and we'll talk. We'll all of us talk with Marshall whenever we're able to get him on. So let's bring Barbara and Michael on as well, and we'll just talk through some of the things. Barbara and Michael, thank you guys. This may be a little bit difficult this morning, but we can handle it, and we've done it before. You guys probably don't remember Jackie Walker, but I can tell you he was one of the most phenomenal football players I've ever seen. I think it's and the fact that the university would honor these gentlemen, Condridge Holloway, Lester McLean, who was first, and then T. Martin, who won the championship, was just pretty much incredible. And so anyway, any comments from you guys?
Yeah, I did not know him during his playing career there at Tennessee, but just reading about this man, he had to be totally phenomenal, not just on the football field, but I read where he actually was in several theater productions there at the University of Tennessee, that he had a phenomenal singing voice. He was a tenor and sang in the choir, and loved the arts. Not only that, he played amateur tennis and traveled around the country playing tennis. I think there was a league of black tennis players, and it sounded like he was the one that really kept that thing going. So he had a lot of different interests, and I was just amazed at the talents that he had, not just in the football field, but in the arts and other areas as well.
Michael?
Yes, I'd have to echo what Barbara said. I was a little bit too young to not know of Jackie Walker, but I certainly knew of Condridge Holloway. I remember him playing quarterback at Tennessee. But when you look at all the honors that he has from playing, there's one stat where he has 281 interception return yards, which ranks 4th all-time on Tennessee all-time chart, behind 3 defensive backs who are all his teammates. So when you look at that and think about him being one of the first persons of color to suit up for Tennessee and to be able to come in and do that, that gives you an idea of not only his athletic ability, but I'd have to say his mental toughness, because, you know, it could not have been easy at that particular time, because you were, quote, breaking the ceiling, so to speak, that glass ceiling.
Well, and this is when Tennessee was really good.
Yes.
And Tennessee, they were 30-5.
All right, here we go.
In his tenure. Marshall, you're back. Marshall, just talk a little bit about your career and your brother, and we were trying to work through some of those things, and we'll just lead.
Go ahead and talk about the monument.
Okay. When the athletic department at the University of Tennessee contacted me regarding, they said they wanted to get permission to put Jackie's statue on campus. And of course we talked, and I granted permission. To be honest, it was difficult for me to believe it, because I'm thinking of Jackie, and this year would be his 50-year anniversary, his senior year at UT, and I guess I kind of got emotional. I really didn't believe it until I saw images of the statues, and I still really didn't believe it until it was unveiled on UT campus. And all the athletic department people, many of Jackie's former high school teammates and college teammates, especially Tim Priest, who was captain Jackie's junior year. Tim Priest played DB, and Tim Priest was stayed a family friend, just as Coach Hirschman did, who was our lifetime friend. He was our head coach at Fulton High School, and he was Jackie's position coach at UT. Coach Hirschman.
Okay. Let me, we're going to be running out of time here shortly. I think one of the other things that was really interesting.
Okay. And of course, that day came, and the celebration went really well. Those statues chain, they are really, really nice. And I would say this: Jackie may have been more religious than I was, and he sung a lot, and he would have been singing and doing what we would call the holy dance, because our family, my mother grew up in the House of God Holiness Church, and we celebrated our family religion in the House of God Holiness Church, or in Mizan Church. And I know Jack would be proud, and he would be happy, and hope that just
One of the things that I met Marshall, 10, maybe 15 years ago. And we were interested in doing a documentary about Jackie, which is being shot now, being put together now. And one of the things that I think is really interesting, particularly in that time, is Jackie was gay, and he was openly gay. And
So Tom, you played against him. Did you all know that he was
at the
gay?
time, no, I didn't.
Okay.
But his coach did, and his
Okay.
teammates did. And as a matter of fact, they had a draft party for him, and Coach Battle said that he was going to leave if Jackie showed up in a dress.
I started believing it because what the coaching staff emphasized to me, and I really think this is the coaching staff that probably should be at the University of Tennessee for the next 10, 20 years. Everybody gonna probably look at me crazy, but the coaches came to UT, did research, and they wanted to start celebrating all athletes that ever played at UT and that are playing today. And I thought it was amazing that around this same time that another linebacker who one of the few who made All-American, and he was inducted into the National College Hall of Fame, and that's Al Wilson. And I think the coaching staff now, in honoring Jackie, Les McClain, Holloway, and T. Martin,
let me just kind of pick it up from here. We're going to run out of time, so we'll probably have to get Marshall back on at a time when we can have this conversation, because it's a great conversation.
Yes.
And as I said, and then I'd like to see if we could get one of the other guys on who's also honored. And Condridge, I played against Condridge as well. We got to be pretty good friends. And I knew Lester because Lester was first. And so you knew all the first guys, and we all knew each other. So I'm going to go ahead and try to move us along. I know some of us have something to do here a little later. We'll try and come back. I don't know, Michael. I didn't get to hear from you. You guys want to make a couple comments about Jackie Walker and Marshall Walker, of course?
Well, a couple things, and you had started to speak on that. I think it says a lot about the University of Tennessee, both then and now. First of all, you mentioned the fact not only was Jackie one of the first, but he was also gay. And he played football at Tennessee, and they knew it. And they basically accepted him for who he was at the time, even though at that particular time, that was taboo, and you didn't hear about that. But they protected him and accepted him as one of their own, and they went ahead and played football with him anyway. And there wasn't a scandal about it. That says a lot about it. And as Marshall was alluding to, and I think it kind of, in some respects, is similar to what I was saying in comparison Auburn to Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama, when he says this new coaching staff came in, and they did their research, and they wanted to honor the African-American players that had played at Tennessee in the past, as well as those that are playing in the present. All that's going to do is make those particular players feel more welcome at schools like Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama. And I have to say, over the weekend, and, you know, I was at a little gathering for somebody, and this person was from Tuskegee. That was the first time they were meeting me, and they said, "You went to Auburn?" And I said, "I did. I graduated from Auburn." And I told her what year. And she looked at me and said, "Did you experience racism at Auburn, you know, from the professors? And did you have a lot of incidents like that?" And I was just surprised that she asked me that question, because that's the perception at Auburn. Okay. And it's a disappointing perception, but it is. And I looked at it and I said, "Well, no, I did not have those experiences. Certainly not from the professors or whatever." And I just said, "Well, I grew up in Auburn, so a lot of people knew me." And that's how I kind of moved away from, you know, not to say that it wasn't there, but speaking from my own experience there, you know. So I find it interesting that Auburn is right now viewed as one of those schools because we don't do enough to acknowledge the contributions of African Americans at Auburn.
I think, and I'm ahead of you, obviously, and older, but I've gotten that most of my life. When I graduated from Auburn, there was one other black alum in Birmingham, Rufus McGee, but I've often got that question: why is your university so racist? And then you're in the position of defending a culture that, in some cases, is indefensible. But you know, it is what it is. And I think if some of the people who are in positions would be subject to those conversations that you just mentioned and that I've been subjected to, I think we would maybe see some substantive cultural change. Not listening sessions.
Right.
Okay. Anybody got anything else? I'm going to move on. We're running out of time, and I apologize to the audience for today because we're going to get Marshall back on. And Jackie was great. And I will say this about Coach Bill Battle, who was the coach at Tennessee at the time. He was aware that Jackie was gay. He also brought Condredge Holloway in to play quarterback. And Bear Bryant had tried to recruit Condredge Holloway to the University of Alabama, but he told him he couldn't let him play quarterback at Alabama because the people weren't ready for that.
Right.
And Tennessee said, "Well, you can come here and play quarterback." He ended up being All-American. We both drafted by the New England Patriots. He went on to the Canadian League and had a great career. And as I said, he's a good friend. So let's move on. Thank you all. Thank you, Marshall. We'll do it again. we'll have you'll be our G list for the second time guest. Okay, so let me close out my commentary, uh, or as I see it. At this time in 1995, do you know where you were? I do. I was at the Million Man March in Washington, D.C., which was billed as a Day of Atonement. The Million Man March was a large gathering of African American men in Washington, D.C. on October 16, 1995. It was held on the National Mall. Prominent speakers were invited to address the audience. Thousands of African American men from across the United States converged in Washington to convey to the world a vastly different picture of bail and to unite self-help and self-defense against economic and social ills plaguing the African American community. It was awesome. I was there. Several of my friends and I decided that we had to go. Stacey Danley, Henry Ford, Cedric McIntyre. It's still a highlight in my life. A conflict arose about the crowd size estimates. You know, it is billed as the Million Man March. It was finally determined that by ABC TV researchers that there were at least 837,000 Black men at this Million Man March. The thing we were most impressed with, we continually talked about, was the order and respect that everyone had for each other. And while, yes, it was primarily African American men, there were whites throughout the crowd and many women. At the end of the afternoon's events, we would rush back to our hotel to watch the news and listen to the descriptions of how things were portrayed. Things were portrayed much differently than the love and the cooperation and the respect that we experience. There would be some incident picked out that nobody really knew was going on as symbolic of what was happening that day, and that was not what was happening. I wonder if there will ever be another Million Man March. I even wonder in this day and time if you could even have another Million Man March without trouble and without violence. And that's how I see it for this Tuesday, October the 12th, 2021. That's our show for today. I want to thank the audience for being with us. We apologize for the difficulties. We'll get Walker back on, Marshall back on at some point. I want to thank Michael and Barbara for working through the difficulties. Thank our G-list guest, Marshall Walker. Marshall, we apologize to you, and you and I will talk, and we'll work something out. And good luck with the documentary. Jackie deserves it. Upcoming G-list guests on Tuesdays with Thom will be entrepreneur Larry Thornton, a man who owns, I think, 7 or 8 McDonald's restaurants. He's a franchisee. Doctoral student Crystal Harrell will be here. And Crystal is an interesting young lady. I think that you will enjoy meeting. The Alabama High School Athletic Association Executive Director Alvin Briggs will be here with us over the next. That's our guest for the next 3 weeks. I want to thank our sponsor, Best Girl Inc. and Mainstream Financial Group. You know somebody who you think would make a great guest, please refer them to us at either Thom at Best Girl or Emily at Best Girl. I want to thank Emily Hedrick, the communicator, our producer. Thanks, Sean Jones, the organizer. Remember to enjoy yourself. Make every day count. Stay safe. Peace.